Have you ever picked up a history book and wondered, where did this all come from? Every single one of those books is the last chapter in an absolutely dramatic story. It's a story of how knowledge gets made, how it's saved from the very brink of being lost forever, and how a single piece of technology can change, well, everything. Today we're jumping into that story, the incredible, almost unbelievable tale of how the great histories of the Islamic world were written.
But let's start with that big question. Where does history actually come from? It kind of feels like it's always just there, right? Carved in stone. But the truth is, every story we know is the result of a long, incredibly fragile chain of people passing it from one to the next. And sometimes that chain comes terrifyingly close to breaking.
For Islamic history, the answer to that question points to masterworks like these. We're talking about the heavy hitters. You've got the epic Tariq al-Tabari, massive universal histories by scholars like Ibn Kathir, and even Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddimah, which basically invented the philosophy of history. These books are the giants, the very foundation of what we know. But here's the thing, they didn't just magically appear. Their existence is a flat-out miracle, born from a crisis that almost wiped the slate clean.
See, in the very beginning, there were no history books. Why would you need them? The companions of the Prophet were right there. History was alive. You could just go ask someone. But as that first irreplaceable generation started to pass away, a terrifying thought must have crept in. What if we forget? What if all these stories, all these lessons just vanish?
This is where it gets wild. It was literally a relay race against time. The Caliph Umar bin Abdulaziz saw the clock ticking, and he gave an urgent order to one of the greatest scholars of the time, Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. His mission, find the last living companions, the final eyewitnesses, and write down what they remember. So al-Zuhri becomes this first runner, gathering the knowledge, and then he passes that baton to his students, creating a human chain of memory before finally putting it all together in the very first book of Islamic history.
And then it was gone, just like that. Shortly after it was finished, the Umayyad Caliphate collapsed. And in all that chaos, that first priceless book, the direct connection to the beginning, it just vanished. Lost to the world, it seemed, forever. What a devastating blow.
But the problem wasn't just political chaos. It was a technology problem. And the solution, funnily enough, was about to come from a battle with China. It would introduce a technology that didn't just save history, it completely reshaped the world.
Okay, so check this out. Before this moment, everything was written on stuff like papyrus. And papyrus was, well, it was terrible. It was expensive, it was fragile, it was a pain to make. Writing a book was a luxury. But after a battle, the Muslim world learned the secret of papermaking from Chinese prisoners of war. And paper was a game changer. It was cheap, it was tough, and you could make tons of it. It was, and I'm not exaggerating, the internet of its day. And this wasn't some little craft workshop. The Abbasid Caliph, the legendary Harun al-Rashid, he saw the future. He understood what this technology meant. He poured state money into it, building a huge paper factory right in the middle of his new capital, Baghdad. He was basically building the highway for a knowledge explosion.
And an explosion is exactly what they got. With paper being cheap and everywhere, the Islamic Golden Age kicked into high gear. All of a sudden, writing and copying books wasn't just for the super rich anymore, it was an entire industry. And his quote kind of says it all, doesn't it? It gives you a feel for how much things changed. Knowledge became the ultimate social currency. Scholars weren't just guys in dusty rooms. They were celebrities. They were the rock stars, the superstars of their time.
And oh, the masterpieces they created. Thanks to paper, not only could they piece back together the knowledge from that first lost book, they could build on it, expand it, perfect it. You get the great hadith collections, you get detailed biographies, and you get giants like al-Tabari creating these monumental histories that were built to last, all because the words were no longer written on something that could crumble to dust.
And the heart of this entire universe was the House of Wisdom, Beit al-Hikmah. This place was legendary. It was like a library, a translation center, and a university all rolled into one massive intellectual powerhouse. It was the beating heart of an empire of ideas, and it was all powered by the paper mills humming away in Baghdad.
For 400 years, this golden age of knowledge just blossomed. It must have felt like it would go on forever. But then, an unstoppable force came riding out of the east, and everything, absolutely everything, was about to be destroyed.
The year is 1258. Hulagu Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, arrives at the gates of Baghdad. The city had become the center of the world, but it was also complacent, caught up in its own debates. It had no idea the storm that was about to break.
What happened next was just one of the most brutal moments in all of human history. The sack of Baghdad was a week of unimaginable horror. The historical accounts are grim. They talk about the rivers of the city literally running red with blood. The physical destruction was just the start.
And this is the part of the story that just sends a shiver down your spine. After the killing, the Mongol armies turned their attention to the House of Wisdom. They took every book, every manuscript, 400 years of accumulated knowledge, and they threw it all into the Tigris River. The accounts say there were so many books that the river, once red with blood, now ran black with their ink.
They didn't just destroy the knowledge that existed, they destroyed the engine that created it. The great paper factories of Baghdad were torched. In one catastrophic event, the Islamic Golden Age wasn't just put on pause, it was brought to a sudden, violent, and tragic end.
The Muslim world eventually recovered, of course, but the center of intellectual gravity had been shattered. A few centuries later, as a new power rose, another technological revolution appeared. But this time, the response would be completely different, and it would lead to one of history's greatest missed opportunities.
Over in Germany, around 1450, a man named Johannes Gutenberg invents a machine that could do for entire books what the paper mill had done for a single sheet. The printing press was here, and it was about to launch a new explosion of knowledge, this time in Europe.
The difference this thing made was just staggering. Look at these numbers, they tell the whole story. A skilled scribe in the Ottoman Empire, working all day, could maybe copy 40 pages. The new printing press, it could churn out 4,000. But the new superpower in the Muslim world, the Ottoman Empire, made a fateful choice. For a mix of reasons, some religious, some political, they effectively banned the printing press for books in the Arabic script.
For 300 years. Let that sink in for a second. For 3 centuries, while Europe was having a renaissance and a scientific revolution fueled by the mass production of books, the Muslim world was still copying them by hand. By the time the press was finally adopted, the world had been completely transformed.
It's an incredible story, isn't it? A story of innovation, catastrophe, and these huge, fateful decisions. It just goes to show you that history isn't just about what happened. It's about what gets saved, what gets shared, and the technologies we choose to embrace or to reject. And that leaves us with a really big question for our own time. What's the technology that's writing the history of tomorrow, and are we embracing it, or are we about to miss our own chance?